Good morning. So I'll do a little bit more about us, but this is my wife, Jessica. She doesn't like to be on the stage too much, but there she is. She's usually wrestling with our two kids. So we are the Birds. I'm Jordan. This is Jessica. And then we have a son named John who's about a year and a half. And then our daughter's name is Josephine, and she's about 4 years old. And I'm sure you guys will see her kind of running around there. Before I get into too much, though, I wanted us to open our Bibles, if we got them, to John chapter 1. I'm going to try to do this short so I can get to the other stuff as well. But in John chapter 1, I'm sure you guys are familiar with it, it says, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." Verse 2, he says, "He was in the beginning with God. All things came into being through him, and apart from him nothing came into being that has come into being." Verse 4 says, "In him was life, and the life was the light of men." And then verse 5, "And the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not overtake it." And that's that number 5 is kind of the one I want to dwell on. As you're going to find out, Lithuania is a dark place, not in the sense of poverty, not even in the sense of war at the current moment, but spiritually it's very dark. But as I was thinking of this verse today, and I don't know how much you guys look at the news, but there's always wars and rumors of wars, right? I think I heard something about we bombed Iran. I don't look at the news that much. But I was talking with some of my friends, and they started to panic. And they're like, what happens if this happens and this happens? And I wanted to remind you guys as well, this is the truth. There will always be darkness, and there's always going to be sin until the Lord comes back. But that darkness will never overcome. That, as this translation said, that darkness will never overtake. So even if there's wars, even if they come over and try to invade us, we don't have to fear because Jesus has authority. Jesus is reigning, and Jesus is in charge. And then even just thinking through that, like I said, I don't know how much you guys view the news, but this month I think is called Pride Month. And it seems like our world gets ever wicked and more wicked. And it seems like it gets darker and darker. We're still murdering millions of babies. Homosexuality is on the rampant, and it can seem even like we should get down, but we can rejoice because of this truth. We know that the light will not be overtaken by the darkness, and that's the confidence I go into to even go overseas. But that's just a little thing I wanted to share with you. Hopefully, give you guys some hope if you don't have it. But no matter what you're facing, no matter how dark the world seems, we have Christ. And in case you guys didn't know, when it's talking about the light, it's talking about Christ has come, and he has come. And now we're just awaiting. But he's reigning, he's victorious. Just like we've been singing about, he's victorious. And so that's the hope we have, and that's the hope I have going to a spiritually dark place. That it might be dark, but it will not overcome the light. So yeah, my name is Jordan. You guys don't know me. That's fair. But one thing I love when I get to visit other churches is we're family. We're family underneath the blood. And I love it when I go overseas, but I love it even over here, is that no matter where I go, I can find family. And I rejoice in that we can all unite. So I don't know you that well, you don't know me, but you're all my family. And then one thing I always like to mention before I really get going is I think people have this tendency to sometimes think missionaries are special. I'm here to say we're not. We're normal people. Our kids are normal kids. They get in trouble. They run around screaming. They yell. More than that, I grew up a normal, I don't know if it's normal or abnormal, but I grew up on a farm, so I did farming. I played in metal bands throughout. I'm a drummer. I played in metal bands throughout my life. I've done all kinds of things. We're just normal people. And why I say this is because it's only by the grace of God that we go overseas. It's only by him calling us. And the only real difference between a missionary and someone that's not is we obey. We obey. We obey God. God says go, and we go. And that's not to say that you're not obeying if you're staying here, but are you going? Are you going to this place around you? Like I just shared with you, the darkness will not overtake the light. But are we going and pronouncing that light to the world around us? And like I said, we're nothing special. We just love Jesus, and we want to obey him to the best of our ability. But a little bit about Lithuania. Who knows where Lithuania is? All right, if you have your hand up, you know more than I did. Okay. All right. When I first heard the name Lithuania, I was thinking it was one of those like fake Disney countries. Like I never heard of the country, and I thought, is this even real? I've never heard of it. And so through looking into it, we found it out. But if you don't know where it's at, it's in the Baltic states. If you don't know where that's at, it's just a little bit above Poland. They do border Ukraine a little bit. They definitely border Belarus. And if you can see the little kind of arrow down there, that's where Lithuania is at. Next slide, please. Some things to know about Lithuania before we get into too much. There's approximately 3 million people in Lithuania. There's estimated to be about 4 million Lithuanians worldwide, but there's 3 million still in Lithuania. The size of the country is approximately, you can drive across it in about 3 hours. I think when I looked it up, it's close to the size of like West Virginia, if you can visualize that. So it's fairly small. A lot of people go only 3 hours, but gas is like $4 a liter, which is almost like $12 a gallon. So traveling isn't the easiest thing to do. And if you're ever looking at our gas prices and thinking, man, that's too high, look at Europe's gas prices. You'll be very thankful very fast. Their main industry is IT. That's like their big industry now. That they have, according to them, they have the world's fastest internet. They mainly do a lot of IT work for American companies, but they got some of their own started. The biggest tourist industry is amber. They pull amber out of the Baltic Sea, and that's like if you're going to Lithuania, you want to buy their amber. That's a definite. You want to do it. And yeah, we can go to the next slide. Who likes potatoes? A lot of people, right? If you love potatoes, God might be calling you to Lithuania. All right. They love their potatoes. They love their potatoes so much that when McDonald's went into the country and started importing potatoes from America, they almost went out of business because Lithuanians say their potatoes are better. And McDonald's had to switch to Lithuanian potatoes, and then they started to pick back up again. Does that look tasty there? Does that bowl look tasty? Yeah, some adventures. That's called salty bocce, which is a long word. Essentially, it is a cold borscht or a cold beet soup. It is actually really delicious. It does look like Pepto-Bismol. It does, and it really does. It looks like you're eating Pepto-Bismol. But what's in it is just beets, sour cream, there's some eggs, or you can use kefir. And it's cold, and then it's served with warm potatoes on the side because you have to have potatoes. Some of the other things is they have stores like we do. Unlike our stores where you go to the store and you have probably like 30 different options or 10 different options of something, you might only have 1 or 2 options of what you're looking for. And if you want peanut butter, you're paying a very high price. I think a little jar of peanut butter about that size is usually like $10 in equivalent. So it's a little bit more expensive. There's stores over there, but they have normal ones. One of their infamous stores is called Icky. And so you can go, and they have branded food like we do, so you can go to Icky and buy an Icky dinner and then make an Icky dinner at home. That sounds pretty good. But yeah, that's just to show some of Lithuania, and we'll get into a little bit more in some of the needs. But next slide. All right, so a little bit about us. I've already introduced myself, so I don't have to do that again. But we've been on quite the journey. When we first got married, I was working as a plumber and wanted nothing to do with missions. I was just kind of doing my job. We settled down. I got the house. We were excited. And we both knew from a young age that God called us to missions. Like I knew around 12 years old, we had a missionary come to our church. And it was the first time it clicked with me that missionaries aren't taking cool trips. Because for the longest time, I was like, yeah, like don't let the guy speak, just show us the slides. Like, what's he doing? And it finally clicked with me that, like, no, this person's doing something serious. He's sharing Christ with these people. And as that thought came into my mind, God then put another thought in my mind and said, well, why not you? And then being 12, I was like, yeah, I'm going to do this. And so I went forward to the missionary. We prayed about it. And then about a week later, I forgot all about it. And then we're kind of caught back up. A little bit even more background, I guess, is we both grew up in Christian homes by the grace of God. And we both trusted in Christ at an early age. By the grace of God. And we've seen his ever-growing grace as we see how wicked we are every day, but how gracious he is. But back to kind of that point where we got married, another missionary came in to our church, and he was speaking, and he said something that I thought was kind of crazy at the time, but he was like, I've been praying for this church, and I know that someone in this church is supposed to go to the mission field. And immediately, as I'm sitting there, God was like, that's you. And I was like, no, that's not me. Someone else, he's praying for someone else. It must be someone else. At that time, I've done a lot of jobs, but at that time I was working as an auto mechanic with my dad and brother, and I was like, this is good. Like, I'm with my family, this is good. No, not right now. But I had no peace. And no matter what job I did, because I worked tons of different jobs, I would never find peace. And I know there's no perfect job where you're just like, oh, I just love my job so much. I mean, some people do, but there's always days, right? But there was a definite no peace. And then so I started fasting, and I started praying. And then I remember it was about midweek, because it was a missions conference, and the missionary was there most of the week, that God, as I was fasting, and it wasn't like an audible voice, but I could sense the voice. And God told me, I've been asking you to do this your whole life. Are you going to obey me or not? Because I'll never ask you again. And at that point, I was like, yes, God. I'm like, whoa, yes, God. And then I thought, man, now I got to go convince my wife that we should do this. And I go to my wife, and I'm kind of dreading it, and I'm going, oh, man. And I go to her, and I start just trying to spill very, very quietly. I'm like, I think God's, and she goes, it's about time. And she's like, I've known this. It's about time. It's about time that you finally are listening. But anyway, trying to fast forwarding a little bit, through that, we went and talked with that missionary. He invited us out. He was a missionary in New York, and he started just training us on what it is to be a church planner. So we were out there for about 2 weeks. He trained us how to do some more evangelism and just really kind of push us out of our comfort zone. And it was hard because it was out of your comfort zone, but it was great because it was out of your comfort zone. And just seeing God move. But from there, I was like, I don't have a lot of, I've done different college things, but nothing in Bible, so I was like, I need to get some training. We found a school out in Minnesota called Bethany Global University. A very small school, but they specialize in missions. And one of the things when we said God is calling us, we were like, you know what, God, if you're really calling us, if this is really you, then make a way for us to be on the mission field in 2 years. Because sometimes it takes a while for missionaries to get over there. And we're like, if it's really you, 2 years, well, come to find out, this school that he opened the door for puts you on the mission field. You're basically your third year of college. So through that time, we got to go to the country of Hungary. We were there for about 8 months. And we loved it. We were able to start like a small church plant and get going. And then that was around the year 2020, and COVID happened. And God took us home. And I'm sharing this just to show how our journeys and how God can shape it. Because here I'm in Hungary thinking, God, why are you pulling me back to the States? I was supposed to be over there longer. And it was hard. I was leaving people. I was leaving a ministry. And I'm going, what is happening? But I'm like, if you're doing it, there's a purpose. And it turned out there was, because I got to go back to the States and work with navigators, if you're familiar with them. They work with college students. But I got to work with international college students. And through that, if I would have stayed, it would have never happened, but I was able to disciple a young Chinese man who, when I first met him, was just a very timid Christian who didn't know a lot, but as I was discipling him, and he told me, he said, I will never be able to share the gospel. And I said, well, we'll just keep continuing in the word, keep continuing. And by the time he left to go back to China, he said, I don't care what happens. I got to share this news. And that's just the power. That's not the power of me. That's the power of God. But through that, I was able to disciple this man, and I'm just like, that's how our journeys went. But anyway, kind of going a little bit faster. As I graduated college, we were like, okay, what do we do now? My college did have a mission board to go with, but we already had ran into enough stuff with them that we were like, no, we don't want to go out with them. And so we started looking at other mission boards. We looked at ABWE for a little bit. We looked over here, over there. And then we landed on ABWE because their doctrine lined it up with us, and we said, this is it. But then we went to ABWE, and they're like, well, where do you think God's calling you? And the easy thing would have been to say, let's just go back to Hungary. But we were like, no, we don't want to go where we're just comfortable. We want to know that God wants us there. And so we went open to ABWE and their headquarters, and what that means is everybody comes and tells you God needs you here, God needs you here, God needs you here, God needs you here. And you have to sort it out. So we had some criteria. We are passionate about church planning. We want to see churches all around the world, especially in places where there is no churches. But we want to see churches grow. Like, we were blessed by growing up in the church. The church is a wonderful thing. It's an institution of Christ. And so we're passionate about starting churches and seeing people be able to have access to churches. So that was one criteria. The other criteria is we wanted to go somewhere where we were really needed, which is really easy to find. There's needs everywhere. Just look them up. And then our third one is we wanted to go somewhere where there hasn't been a lot of work. And so at that time, God led us to Benin, West Africa. Like I said, we've been on quite the journey. And we were able to visit Africa. We really were like, this is where God's leading us. And I would say about a year ago, we were all gung-ho for Africa. We're raising support for Africa. I've been over there once. But then we lost all peace about a year ago. There were many nights where I was up at like 4, 5, 6 in the morning just laying awake going, what is going on? I was praying and like there's just no peace. I'm going, what is on? God, I thought you directed us to Africa. I thought this is where you want us to go. And then we kind of found out more and more things, and there was, I guess, a couple things that led us away from Africa. One of them was we found out our daughter gets mosquito bites that instead of like the normal size are more like that or that. She gets massive bites, and Africa has a lot of mosquitoes. And then we found out that my body just doesn't do well in the heat very well, and Africa is very, very hot. When I was there, it was around 110 degrees. And that was their colder season. So we found out that. But then the main thing was just this peace. We just kept saying, God, what's going on? We don't have peace anymore. We want your peace. What are you doing? And then I was supposed to, I'm a very stubborn person. There was all those signs, and I'm still like, nah, we still got to go through this door. We got to see what happens. And I was supposed to take another trip back to Africa. And 2 days before my flight, I started developing this pain that I couldn't figure out what was going on. And like I said, I'm stubborn, so 3 days before. So like that third day, I'm like, no, this pain's fine. I can still go to Africa, no problem. But then by the second day, it was unbearable. And I had to go to the emergency room, and they couldn't really figure out what was going on. I met with my doctor a day before my flight, and he was like, I hate to tell you this, but you're not flying anywhere. And so I was grounded. I couldn't fly. I'm going, okay, God, what is going on? And at this point, I'm kind of stopping, going, okay, you're stopping this. Because after that flight left, that pain went away, and it has never been back. They sent me to a specialist, and they're like, I don't know what you're doing here. You don't have any problems. And at that point, we were like, okay, God, what are you doing? And that's when we started to like, okay, obviously we wanted to go to Africa, but obviously it might not be right. And so God led us to the beautiful country of Lithuania. Through a couple different ways, but like I said, we didn't even know the country existed. And then once we found out it existed, I love other cultures. I love meeting other people from other cultures. So I was just like, let's learn about Lithuania. What's going on there? And we can go to the next slide. And so we discovered some of the needs. And to put this in a good perspective, because numbers don't always work, I'm going to do it this way first. So Lithuania is broken into like 30 counties, and they're not really counties, but it's the easy way for us to understand. Only 15 of those counties have access to a church. So it would be like if half of you over here had access to a church, and you guys have no access to the church. And so that's some of the needs. But then beyond that, in those churches, the average size is around 5 to 10 people. And if you have 40 people, you are like the biggest church in Lithuania, like 40 to 45 people. But then also in Lithuania, it'd be like this man right here. He's the lucky one because he's the only Christian in Lithuania. In Lithuania, there are less than 2% evangelical Christians. And so that's the great need. They need Christ. Then beyond that, Lithuania, as I started looking up Lithuania, I started to realize they're very famous for something. And something very, very sad. Because what they're infamous for is the highest suicide rate in Europe. It's estimated, I don't know what the estimations are, but I know like in a city of 10,000, like a little village of 10,000, they have 10 to 12 suicides a year. So it's a very dark country. And then the average woman, as I kept looking up, has 6 to 7 abortions. That's the average woman, 6 to 7 abortions. And people look at it and they try to say, well, the suicide rate's this way because of different factors, like it's cold or it's dark most of the year. But I know what the truth is. It's this high because they don't have the hope of Christ. And a lot of them have never even heard the name of Jesus. Or if they have, it's just his name being used in vain. And so that's some of the great need. Now, a little bit about Lithuania, if you don't know the history very well, they were underneath Soviet rule till 1991. So quite recently, they got out of the Soviet Union. I guess it's not so recent anymore, but it still sees pretty recent. It's definitely still there around them. And during the Soviet rule, they were very atheistic. To the point that if they were putting people in schools, they were putting people around cities to have one job, and their only job was to listen and see if anyone said anything about God. And if they did, they were taken away and never seen again. And so that was what they were under. And then Lithuania is primarily, they were one of the last countries in all of Europe to be even Christianized, and I use that word loosely, but Christianized by the Catholic Church. And so they're mainly Catholic is what they'll tell you. But what they mean by that is they were born into the church. That's the one time they went to church. They will be married by the church. That's the second time. And I don't know if we can count it or not, but they'll be buried by the church, and that's the third time they'll go to church. That's your average one. There's some Lithuanians that do more of the Catholicism, but the main religion is just atheism. The newest one is paganism. Paganism's on the rise. Like I said, they were one of the last countries to be Christianized, and now as the Soviet Unions fell and everything's coming back, the biggest religion on the rise is returning back to their pagan roots. Up there on the slides, you can see one's titled The Hill of Witches. This was a place where they believed that witches and demons would come together and kind of like plan their lives. It wasn't a bad thing, it was a good thing. They have many statues commemorating this. As you walk through it, and you can just kind of sense the darkness. And one thing I was curious about as we're walking through is this just cultural? Is this just part of who they were? And so they're trying to remember it. But what we started to notice as we were walking around these is there's little offerings to these different statues. There's little burnt offerings, there's little money offerings, and you could tell people are still worshiping these things. Now the other one is called the traditional winter mask. And what they do with that, and this one might be more cultural, but they still do it, is they put these kind of weird-looking, scary masks on, and just before winter really comes, they start dancing around the fire to scare off winter, to scare off the cold. Because I didn't go into that yet, but Lithuania is a very, I think, comfortable place, but it's a very cold place. Like right now, their average temperatures are around 50 and 60 is their highest. They barely dip into the 70s, and then in the winter, they're usually below zero at some point, and they kind of just stay there. They get snow. If you guys are familiar with like Alaska, Lithuania is dark in the winter. There's only about 2 hours of daylight to an hour of daylight at different points in the winter. So it's very dark in the winter, but then it means in the summer, it doesn't get dark at all at times, and it's just bright the whole time. But yeah, paganism is on the rise. That's the main thing on the rise. And not a lot of people even know what their beliefs are, so it's kind of a new thing of trying to figure out like what do they believe? How do they apply this in the religion? Next slide. But the good news is the Lithuanian church is there. It's a small number, like I said, it's less than 2%. But thankfully, Christ's church is there. They're smaller churches, like I said. During COVID, they lost 7 pastors, and they've never been able to replace them. There's not a lot of young men that want to go into being a pastor. The churches are small. Most of the pastors, like the one pastor I met, was very discouraged because he's working 60 hours a week at a factory and then trying to pastor the church, and he's going, how can I do both? And I can't do any outreaches, and I can't do much of anything because I'm so tired from work. And that's kind of the normal thing for most people. But I always like to emphasize, as I've talked about, there's the spiritual darkness. There's the suicide rate. There's just the atheism. There's the low numbers of Christians. There's people that have never heard about Christ. But there is the good news. The light is there. The light is there. The church is there. They're small, but they're there. The way I picture it is if you're familiar with Nehemiah, in chapter 1 of Nehemiah is eager for a report. He wants to know what's the condition of Jerusalem. And as he gets the report, he finds out that the walls are broken down, the city's still burned up, and it's just kind of devastated. And that's the way, when you hear reports of Lithuania, that's especially in the Christian sphere, that's what it is. You hear of the church is struggling. It's faithful and it's good, and we should rejoice for them and pray for them. But it's struggling. It's very small in number. It's very much the remnant is there, and it's torn down. Next slide. This is one of my favorite passages, but it says, "How then shall they call on him in whom they have not believed? And how shall they believe in him in whom they have not heard? And how shall they hear without a preacher? And how shall they preach except they be sent? As is written, how beautiful are the feet of them that preach the gospel of peace and bring glad tidings of good things." And that's what Lithuania needs. We need more and more people, maybe even you, maybe God's speaking to you today, to come in and preach the gospel. They need the gospel of Christ. If we want to see change in Lithuania, and this is my prayer, I want to see this 2% percentage just keep going up and going up till it's 100%. And I know God is mighty to save. Next slide. And so what are we going to do? Like I said, we're passionate about church planting, but I really like to simplify it. And I'll go into a little bit more, but the simple vision of ours is to go, get there, to serve alongside the church, to work alongside the church that's already there, to partner with them, and to reach. We want to see Lithuania reach for Christ. There's many ways we can do that, but one of the ways we're partnering with a local church there. We're very thankful for them. They want us to come and help them. But as I told you, there's like 15 counties that have no church, so there's a need for church planting, and we're passionate about starting churches. So that's one of the things we're going to be working on. But as we got there and we discovered these churches are so small, we also realized we need to just start building up the church and filling in where need to be filled in. And then we also are very passionate about starting to train young men to answer that call and start pastoring churches and train them up, disciple them, equip them so that they're able to serve. One of our goals is to take every young man in the church and make him elder qualified and then see if God qualifies them. But have them at the point where they're ready and see if God calls them. And then, like I said, we're passionate about evangelism. We're passionate to see Lithuania reach for Christ. We know that, one of the most comforting verses, and I don't know if it comforts you, is it says that the word of God does not come back void, right? And so we know that if we go and we preach the word, it will not come back void, that there will be fruit, there will be something, because God is active, God is mighty to save. And one of the comforting verses that I always get comforted by is, I think it's in Philippians 1, but it says, "He who began the good work in you will complete it." And that's what I personally and passionately believe about Lithuania, that there is good work going on and God will complete it. Next slide. How can you guys be a part? Main way, praying. Oh, we need prayer. One of the ways that I always tell people to pray, and some people kind of think it's funny, but it's not, is we need prayer that we abide in Christ. That is the most important thing. Like, there are other things to pray for, but the most important thing, as you think of if you're praying for us, is pray that we remain steadfast and abide in Christ. Because in John 15 it says, Jesus is talking about abiding in him, and he says, if you don't abide in me, apart from me, so if we're not abiding in him, apart from him, we can do nothing. And so the way for us to do the greatest work is to be abiding in Jesus, in deep love with Jesus, in deep relationship with him, and that's the number one prayer. Other ways are just praying for Lithuania. I hope just hearing about it has burdened you to want to pray for them. Like I said, 3 million people, less than 2% know Jesus. A lot of them never even heard the name of Jesus. So pray for them. Pray for the churches there. Pray for encouragement. Pray that they will be strengthened. And then pray for us in the sense of that we'll just get the funds we need so we can get over there. We're passionate and ready to go. We are ready to go. The moment we get the funds we need, we're going to be in Lithuania. And I didn't cover it, but they speak Lithuanian, in case you're wondering what language they speak. Most of them, if they're under 30, speak pretty good English. And then if you're over 30, you speak Russian. But everyone speaks Lithuanian. Lithuanian's been a language that Russia tried to get rid of. Germany tried to get rid of. Lithuania has been invaded by Poland, Germany, Russia. They have a history of just being invaded. So we're passionate about learning their language. The only really way to learn their language is to actually go there. There's not a lot of resources. There's some here, but it's hard to know if they're trustworthy. And so we're passionate to get over there, start learning their language, and to start sharing about Jesus. The other way, if God leads you, you can give to us. You can sign up for our newsletter. We send one out about every month. It's a good way to keep up with us and kind of even know what's the more pressing thing to pray for. Like this last month, I was able to do a huge outreach where we were able to hand out a lot of Bibles and talk with people about Jesus. And then we did our VBS pretty early, but we did that I think about a week ago, and just a great time of sharing about Jesus. But yeah, any I don't know how much time we have, but any questions? Yes. So with our agency, there is none. We're going to be the first with ABWE to go in. There is approximately 5 other evangelical missionaries in the country. That's as far as we've found so far and know about. 2 of them kind of work at a Christian school, college thing where they do education. And then there is one Southern Baptist missionary, there's a couple of charismatic missionaries, and then there's one missionary who's been there for about 20 years, and he's now thinking about retiring. We're hoping we can overlap with him a little bit because he has a lot of wisdom. But he's considering retiring now. He's been there for quite a while. But good question. Anyone else? Yes. Yeah, we'll strictly pretty much be on the mission field. We might be able to get another job. They don't really like foreigners coming in and taking their jobs. Yeah, I mean, it is. There are foreigners there that do get jobs, but it's very rare. And kind of even just a little bit of their economy is, a lot of people do try to work in Lithuania, but most people actually work somewhere else. And so a lot of the guys I met work in France for 4 weeks, come home for a week, then go back to France for 4 weeks, come home for a week, because there's just more money in France. I think he told me he got paid 3 times what he would in Lithuania or something like that. So people still do work in Lithuania, but a lot of them do work somewhere else. So there are jobs. But good question. Yeah. Anyone else? Yeah. They're not under the Soviet Union anymore. They're kind of, I don't know if they're a full democracy, but they're under a parliament system, kind of like England. They're part of the European Union. They're also part of NATO. But yeah, they got free from the Soviet Union in 1991. So they were able to get free from there. But good question, yeah. Anyone else? I don't know if anyone's thinking it, but they are really close to the Ukraine situation. I'll just share that. They are, as a government, they are worried about Russia coming in. They constantly are upping their defenses. They've also taken in tons and tons of Ukrainian refugees. They stand with Ukraine fully, to the point that if you were to go to Vilnius, their capital city, their Lithuanian flag is the same height as the Ukrainian flag, and they always have the same amount of each. They stand very much with the Ukraine. We got to meet with some of the refugees there. I mean, kind of, I guess, some encouragement if you've ever been wondering, what's the point of this war? And I don't know what the point is totally. But I can say that through these refugees having to flee, some of them have been Christians. And the Ukrainian refugees are some of the most evangelistic, missional-minded Christians I've ever met. For instance, in Lithuania, people are very quiet. And it takes a little bit to get to know them. If you were to sit in a room with Lithuanians, you would typically know who they are because they're very quiet. And then when you've got the churches mixed and you have Ukrainians coming in with the Lithuanians, you can always be like, that person's not Lithuanian. Lithuanians are very loud and outgoing. But the Ukrainians come into Lithuania, and I've met some of them, and they're at these churches and they're going, what are you guys doing for evangelism? What do you mean you're doing nothing? Let's get something going. And so like I said, I don't know the point of the war, but I can say that God is using that in an incredible way. And his gospel's going forward through these refugees, going out and just declaring the goodness of Christ. Any other questions? Yeah. Yeah, good question. So Lithuania, the capital is Vilnius. That's where about 1.5 million of them live. We're going to be in a city called Kaunas, which is about an hour away from Vilnius. And there's approximately about 800,000 people there. But that's where we're going to start, is in Kaunas. And then from there, we're very passionate to get out to some of these other cities where there are no churches. But as we're learning language, we're going to start in Kaunas, especially with our partners, and really build them up, and hopefully through our partnerships be able to start some more churches and build up some other churches. But that map's probably too small to see. But Vilnius is kind of on the far west or east, and then Kaunas is just a little bit west of Vilnius. The next big city is called Klaipėda, and it's on the coast. And that one, I think, has around 400,000, 500,000 people. And then the other cities kind of just dwindle from there, but those are the three main cities. Vilnius is the capital, Kaunas, where we're going to be starting, and then Klaipėda is like a port city where they did a lot of that amber I was telling you guys about. But yeah. Any other questions? Not at the moment, no. Not really. So their crimes are very rarely violent. I'm sure you could probably run into it. Sadly, most of their crimes are like domestic abuse type stuff. That's really what their main thing is. And then you do run into, like, pretty much whenever you travel around the world, there's people that will like pickpocket you and stuff, but they're not wanting to be violent. They just want to grab your money. And then like the present threat would be as if Russia decides to go further than the Ukraine, which I don't know enough about any of that to know if that really would happen or not happen. I know if it did happen, it would be a really big deal because they're part of NATO. But all three Baltic states are worried about that. And they have had cases where, like in Estonia, the country kind of the second one up from Lithuania, Russia keeps pushing their borders across the river farther. So they're building up bigger walls. They're getting more strong. But I would say it's a fairly relatively safe country. Even pickpocketing is very, very low. The most when I was talking to people, the most thing they said is sadly domestic abuse is like that's what cops have to deal with all the time. That's what they have. So yeah. But yeah, good question. Any other questions? Like I said, visit us at our booth. Feel free to chat with us. We can try to answer most questions. We don't know all the answers, and I'll tell you that if I don't know it. But thanks for having us, guys.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate you guys coming today and sharing your journey with us. Definitely continue to pray for you guys in your journey and moving forward with where God is leading you and directing your steps. At this moment, as the worship team comes on stage here and gets ready, if we could all please stand as we close together in worship today.
Spoke a word, you were singing over me. You have been so good to me. Before I took a breath, you breathed your life in me. You have been so kind to me.
Thank you. I'm standing. I just wanted to make sure that I stood next to Elena here because she looks so great this morning, her sister Katie, and obviously Andrew and Paul and Laura, you have been such a blessing. We just thank you so much for that. There's some cake and coffee over here, so you're welcome to all the cake, but be careful how much coffee because I need some. But that's all there. But Jordan and Jessica, we just pray God's riches over you. We desperately need missionaries everywhere, but Lithuania, that's God's direction. Thank you for sharing your journey. We want missionaries, but we want them in the right place. And it's not as easy as it appears to a lot of people. There's a lot of burdens, there's a lot of call, there's a lot of need. And everywhere you go, they say, we need you here, we need you here. But the question is, where does God need you? God needs you in Lithuania. So make sure you sign up for their prayer letter, and make sure you keep them in your prayers. We're looking forward to that and being part of their ministry and all that God has called them to do, that we can be part of that. They're obedient in going, and we're obedient in staying, and we get to be part of that ministry team. And what a wonderful place to train navigators. We're kind of big on navigators, but only for about 52 years now, so we haven't been with them long, but we're excited about their discipleship ministries and all that's happening. So we're going to dismiss the Bird family back to their table. You can meet them and talk with them there. We're going to dismiss the Woods Nation over to the table so you can greet them and thank them for being here and pray their blessing and find out where they're going and what God's calling them to. And they get the joy now of finding a home church. Yippee. But anyway, I think it was, what was it, Forrest Gump's mother or his dad that said life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. So they get to go and find a home church. So we're excited about that. Excited about Pastor Casey being here with us next week to share. I'll be preaching, but he's going to be sharing about Grace Christian School. And we've got great family here of Grace Christian School. I'm part of one of their adopted children. And so we're excited about that and thankful for those ministries. So you are dismissed to those places. Thank you.